You know, clothing styles can become outdated rather quickly, fortunately. But the look of a building can become a permanent symbol of a community's heritage, a symbol that tells not only where a community's been, but also where it's going.
Lee's Summit, Missouri. It's a city with a picturesque past. Originally plated in 1865 as Strother, Missouri, the city was finally incorporated and had its name changed to Lee's Summit in 1868. Through the early years, as the city grew, so did the number of buildings and residential homes.
Just a moment, please. There, that's much better. Oh, here, let me help. For a few minutes, I'd like to talk with you about historic preservation, because today, more than ever, historic preservation in Lee's Summit has never been so easy or rewarding. Hi, John.
Good morning.
How are you?
Oh, I'm fine today. How are you?
Good, good. Your building looks just great.
Well, thank you very much.
Oh, it does. Tell me, why did you decide to restore it rather than just tear it down and start all over again?
Oh, we looked at the building for a long time, and it had such architectural character and heritage, and we thought it was an important piece of Lee's Summit history that we would restore it and make it a good business venture. And it's an investment. We hope that the property values will increase as the building ages and as more projects are completed in Lee's Summit.
Tell me a little bit about the history of this building, John. What kind of past does it have?
Well, it was the planing mill for the old J.C. Jones lumber yard. And this is where they made trim lumber and panel doors for the lumber yard. So a lot of the houses in Lee's Summit had wood that was milled here and doors that were machined here in the building.
About how old is the building?
Oh, it's about 90 years old, built around the turn of the century. And actually, we tried to retain as much of the original equipment that was left in the building when we started. So a lot of the mounting blocks from lathes are in there. All the columns and beams are pin construction, so the pins are in the beams. We left it all exposed on the inside.
How'd the cost compare to building just a new building as to restoring this one?
I'd say for the type of size of building we have, it's about the same because many of the things we had to do were the same as you would in new construction. Plus, we had all the repair and restoration work that added to the cost.
Are you happy with the result of the restoration?
Oh, we certainly are, and with both the way the building looks and the partners that are involved in the project are really happy with their investment.
And what kind of problems did you encounter in the restoration of the building?
Oh, there were several. For example, none of the window openings are the same size. They're all different sizes, so each window has to be a little different size.
I see.
And it was hard to get contractors and carpenters that had a feeling for what we were trying to do with the building. And in a building like this, nothing is square. Everything is different. It's not like new construction. We always have to kind of think on our feet and make changes as we go along in the design. And of course, the people who have offices in here have a little different ideas, so it's a matter of trying to blend the new and the historical together in one building.
John, I guess you were one of the first people to restore a building here, at least.
Oh, well, we were, and we were kind of hoping as things happen in downtown Lee's Summit that people would use our building as an example and we'd see more restoration and renovation type work.
Would you say that's happened?
I think so, and we're going to see more of it. It's necessary.
For the most part, restoring a building can be a very rewarding experience, but there are a few problems that people do encounter.
Well, one of the biggest problems was taking the aluminum siding off that had been put on in the 1970s. It was totally covered with aluminum. And then trying to figure out how to restore the brick at a reasonable cost was also the next major problem. The old sign on the front, the Don Knight's Drug, it was there about 40, 50 years. I wasn't aware it was there, so I had to decide whether to remove that or restore it, which I decided to restore, which I think a lot of people in Lee's Summit relate to that sign, and I've got a lot of good publicity over leaving the sign.
Some of the problems we encountered were the electricity. We needed more electricity for our purposes of being a bakery and having extra equipment. We also needed more lighting. The building, as we first approached it or walked into it, was very closed in. There was a drop ceiling that was about 7.5 feet high. And we immediately knew we wanted to remove that. We removed that and found another drop ceiling and discovered that under that there were 12-foot high ceilings. So we stripped back half of our space to the 12-foot high ceilings, which are the original ceilings. And in doing so, discovered another window that has created more natural light for us. There was some repair work needed to be done on the ceilings, and we could not find the original type of tongue and groove. So half of our ceiling is a drop ceiling where our kitchen is, so that we could tear out some of that tongue and groove and patch up in the open sales area. We thought about building a semi-new building with an old structure next to another business that we have. It's an old lumber yard, and it was going to have to be torn down and rebuilt, so basically starting from scratch. We wanted something more on the Main Street area. I myself am more interested in architecture and renovating old buildings, and so found this one and wanted to thought it would be we'd have more atmosphere for an old building. Another benefit to us was the cost. In considering building a new building in an old area, it was going to cost us 3-4 times the amount that it cost us to renovate this building. And we feel like we've got more for our money this way.
In addition, many perceive the government as having excessive control over what they can and can't do. But in reality, the city of Lee's Summit is set up to help those of you attempting historic preservation. How? Well, the answer's simple. Lee's Summit is a certified local government. And just what is a certified local government, you may ask? It's a fair question. A certified local government, or CLG, is an extension of the federal and state preservation program. It's really a working partnership in preservation among many different groups. Let's listen in as representatives from the city and the state discuss Lee's Summit's program.
Well, Judith, this is our first Historic Preservation District designation, the old train depot. These are the plans that the Chamber submitted for the remodeling.
It's looking good. Are you considering sending the plans down to the state office for review sometime soon?
Well, I don't think they're quite ready yet. They're still working on some modifications. Is that part of those CLG requirements?
No, it's not a requirement at all. That's one of the benefits of being a CLG, that as you start working on the landmarks and districts, you can ask our advice at any time.
When we started several years ago, we didn't even know that the CLG existed, so it's a little bit of a surprise that we have these additional benefits.
Yeah, we're down there. We're ready to review the buildings. We're ready to review the ordinances. We went through how many drafts?
Well, gosh, I guess we went through at least nine drafts of the ordinance. I don't know how many you actually saw, but we went through quite a few.
I think I reviewed 4 or 5 of them in the year that we worked together. Though you certainly had a very active interest in a local historic preservation program before we ever started working together.
But we had started many years ago in working with the Chamber and downtown groups and interested citizens and coming up with some way to help revitalize downtown. And pretty quickly they realized that the historic preservation ordinance was going to be the best way to do that.
Well, we were certainly delighted to be able to talk to you about it, and that we had the Certified Local Governments program in place and ready to go.
Well, when we started with the ordinance, we really didn't know about the CLG. We adopted the ordinance and then found out that the CLG was available. We added the public participation sections, we started doing our initial survey and became a CLG. It was a pretty easy process.
And it only took a year, which is actually a very quick process for a municipality that's looking to become a certified local government. And now you have the survey plan in place, and it has given you your recommendations on what areas to go into and survey to identify historic properties.
Well, the survey was very interesting. It identified several areas in Lee's Summit that are appropriate for further study for historic preservation. We were just surprised how many there were in Lee's Summit.
A pleasant surprise for many communities is finding out how much history they have and how much of that history is still around in the form of their buildings. And of course, survey is not the only kind of project that, especially a CLG with those earmarked funds, can do. We've got the survey to identify the historic properties within the community. We've got the funds available to nominate the individual landmarks, such as the depot, or residential or the downtown district to the National Register of Historic Places. And when you do have your historic properties all identified and are ready to do the districting and landmarking, then we have funds and technical assistance available to begin to develop the design review guidelines to keeping the properties looking their historic selves.
Well, the training and educational support you've given us and our commission has been very helpful in getting us organized, getting us on track, and keeping us moving toward our goals.
All right, well, that's one of our requirements under the federal law that established the CLG program. It states very definitely that the State Historic Preservation Office will make sure that each CLG commission gets access to training at least once a year.
Well, it's been very helpful to us, and the CLG has been a nice surprise for us, and we've been very pleased to be able to participate in it.
Well, we hope we will be a surprise to more communities, too.
A CLG must have an Historic Preservation Commission. The commission is made up of 9 members who are approved by the mayor as well as the Board of Aldermen. Each member must either be a resident, a business owner, or a property owner within Lee's Summit. And they must demonstrate a knowledge of local history, architecture, and preservation. Their duties include designating historic districts and individual landmarks, as well as developing design guidelines and reviewing changes within an historic district.
In Lee's Summit, the Historic Preservation Commission has a member who's related to the founder of the town, Ms. May Howard. Hi, May. How are you today?
Fine.
Good. Ms. Howard, what do you think is the Historic Commission's single most important task?
To preserve our rich history that Lee Summit possesses. Also, I believe to involve more people in this so that they will know how important historical preservation really is.
Thank you, May. It's been nice talking to you.
Thank you.
You have a nice day.
You have a nice day, too.
Thank you. The Historic Preservation Commission. Wait a minute. Why am I telling you about it? Why don't we just go see it in action? I don't think I need to walk. Mr. Cameraman, could you do something about getting to the location in a hurry? Thanks. Local historic districts are designated under a local preservation ordinance and fall under the jurisdiction of the Local Preservation Commission. Once an historic zone is laid on an existing zone, the Historic Preservation Ordinance regulates the exterior appearance of the building. This is different than a zoning law which regulates the use of the property. By designating a local historic district, protection is provided for all property within the district. Let's go inside and take a look.
So the only changes visible to the public will be the low brick wall with the light fixtures, the brick facade with the large windows, and the overhead door on the south and east sides.
Are there any questions for the applicant?
I have one regarding the brick. Will this brick require any cleaning before you do your tuck pointing?
Yes, we did some samples on the back side of the building and found that with soap and water it would clean well. We will be matching the mortar joints.
Well, Jerry, the new windows play an important part in the design of the building. What kind of treatment do you have around the windows, and do you have any drawings or photographs of what the new ones will look like?
Yes, the windows we'll be using employ large windows with some brick Rolox sill. We'll have a wood frieze over with some decorative columns at the side, and I've got some pictures similar of a building that we have done.
Let's enter those as Exhibit 12.
After the commission reviews the proposed changes to a structure, they issue a certificate of appropriateness, which is a document stating that you've been before the commission and they've approved what you're doing.
Are there any further questions or any discussion? If there's no further discussion, are we ready for a vote?
Mr. Chairman, not only do I feel that this project meets our design guidelines, but also will play an important role in the revitalization in downtown, so therefore I move that we approve the certificate of appropriateness for this project.
Is there a second for the motion?
I second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the certificate of appropriateness. All those in favor indicate by aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? passed.
I'm here with Dion Wolfenbarger, who is a preservation consultant working for the city. Right now we're in Lee's Summit at Longview Farms. Dion, I understand that Longview Farms is a National Register district. How does a National Register district differ from a local historic district?
Well, we've already seen how a local district designation can provide protection for historic properties. The National Register, on the other hand, provides recognition for those properties. You see, the National Register of Historic Places is our nation's official list of buildings, sites, objects, or even districts that are judged to be worthy of preservation. Like Longview Farms here. These buildings have a lot of colorful history, and from an architectural standpoint, they're quite distinctive. Originally completed in 1916 for millionaire lumber baron Robert Long, it was planned as a scientific farm which would be entirely self-sufficient. Although dairy animals and hogs were raised here, it was Long's daughter Lula who made Longview Farms famous for its saddlebred horses and as an equestrian showplace. Today, Longview Farms is listed on the National Register, but that doesn't restrict the owner of it or any other building on the National Register to any specific use or disposition of the property. Since Longview Farms is a National Register district, it's eligible for certain grants, limited protection, and the federal tax credits.
Okay, so far we've heard about local historic districts and National Register districts. But could you tell us about a third type of district that exists solely to provide these federal tax credits that you mentioned?
Sure. A third type of historic district is called a Certified Local District, or CLD for short. A CLD can be certified by the National Park Service once the community has adopted an approved preservation ordinance. In the past, the tax credits have been an important tool in the revitalization of Missouri's downtown. In Lee's Summit, we hope to use this tool to achieve our goals for downtown also.
All of the various districts, CLDs and CLGs, can be quite confusing to someone new to historic preservation. At first, this may be true, but it's actually very simple. The main thing you should remember is that Lee's Summit is already set up to give you the best possible incentives for restoring both commercial and residential historic buildings. There are knowledgeable people to help answer any questions that you may have concerning design, the legalities involved, and any tax information that you may need. They're here to make sure that you get the most for your efforts.
Historic preservation is important to any community, but it must begin at the local level, here in Lee's Summit. And if you're concerned about the way buildings look, not just to those who will see them today, but to those who will see them in the future, then consider restoring an historic building.
Lee's Summit can always have a symbol of its past, no matter what the future might bring. Yes, want to beam over to the Galaxy Cafe? So long. And remember, it's up to each and every one of us to preserve Lee's Summit's past.